Dr. Suhina Singh, thank you so much for joining me on Playing the Inner Game. It's something we've been trying to tee up for a while, so thank you for finding the time to make it happen. As a way to kick off, I've got the list in front of me. I tried to memorize it, but I couldn't because you're someone who's worn so many hats and still does. You've actually beaten me in terms of number of hats to wear and balls to juggle. So doctor, medical doctor, a model, marketer, reality TV star, entrepreneur, healthcare strategist, executive MBA, healthcare investor, fashion blogger. I've probably missed something else, wife, etc., etc. So you wear an incredible number of hats, and I'll try to touch on all of them at some point. But I always try and think of a clever place to start. There is no clever place to start. I like going back to childhood. So I'd love to kind of start there. You're a third generation South African Indian. Tell me just what are your general memories of life growing up in South Africa?
Oh, wow. So many memories. But first, thanks for having me. It's always great to be chatting with you. So that's wonderful. Wow. So many memories from growing up. So actually, when I was growing up in South Africa, it was actually during apartheid. So that kind of is a bit different. I would say. To be honest, I don't really remember too much about that time until about 13, 14 when apartheid ended, that I really truly sort of understood and realized what apartheid actually was. I was fortunate enough to go to a school where there were all races. So I was very lucky and very fortunate in that regard. But yeah, I think that it definitely defines your life in a way. Crazy story.
I'm all for crazy stories.
Crazy story. So the first time I moved to London and I needed to get someone to help me clean the apartment. But because I grew up during apartheid, it was really unusual to have someone that was Caucasian clean the apartment. It was like bizarre. So every time this woman would come to clean the apartment, I would clean my apartment because I just felt that she's not supposed to clean my apartment.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's this unconscious bias that I had from childhood
to unravel.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite crazy. I mean, I got the hang of it afterwards. It was very tiring to pay someone to clean your apartment and then you're actually cleaning it for them because you don't think they should be cleaning it. So a bit random. Yeah.
Unnecessary guilt. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how about kind of the influence of your parents growing up during that time, maybe teenage years? Did they, not necessarily what they taught you or try to overtly teach, but what did you learn by watching them just from observing?
Oh, wow. So I think the two things with my parents, I'm not sure if there was anything in particular about observing them, but I think that they helped me to be okay with who I was, which for me was a really fundamental issue when I was a kid. I was always the odd one out, unfortunately.
So?
I wouldn't say I didn't have any friends, but I was just the odd one out. I wasn't the popular kid.
Okay.
I wasn't the one with like all the friends in the class. Maybe I was friends with like one person or two people, and that was about it. I wasn't popular at all.
Okay.
And so I always felt like there was something wrong with me or no one really wanted to play with me. And so I just had this issue of just not belonging. And my parents did a really good job in trying to help me to be okay with being different and that it's okay and it's not a problem. And I think that was for me was really important and fundamental. Otherwise, I think I really struggled with that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great because it's almost a superpower as you become older, isn't it? Like once you're an adult and a fully formed adult, I think being a little bit quirky, a little bit of an outlier is actually a superpower. But as a child, social proof is incredibly important. You want to feel like you belong, to be a part of things. There's pressure to blend in. So it can be hard for a child to develop a proper sense of self-esteem. So it's good that your parents help you with that.
No, true. But I think some of that stuff also still carries over into adulthood, right?
Yeah.
Because I do think that there's still a part of me that like, as much as I'm okay with being different, I think there is that small part of me that still wants to belong.
Yes.
If that makes any sense, completely. Right? Because I think that's sort of I think as humans, we're just ingrained to sort of belong socially.
Yes, we are social animals, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And what about in terms of kind of early motivations, maybe to get into medicine? Was that influenced at all by your parents? What was the motivation and driver to enter the world of medicine and helping people out?
I think I was always fascinated with how the human body works.
Okay.
I always found it really fascinating. Yeah. I was like, but I think from my really early days, actually, my brother used to pop off the heads of our Barbie dolls.
A surgeon.
I don't know
Is he
why.
now a surgeon?
He's a dentist,
Okay,
a dental
right.
surgeon, so
Okay.
kind of. So I used to always pretend that they were in hospital with my sister and try to reattach the Barbie doll heads to the rest of its body.
Very noble.
Very noble
Very
cause.
noble. Yeah.
So I guess it was always sort of like in the DNA to sort of move into healthcare.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just a huge passion and drive to help people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, before you moved to London, you trained and, entered the world of medicine. Kind of before that, you were involved in the world of fashion, modeling. Tell me a bit more about that aspect or part of your life.
Oh, wow. That was one hell of a journey, to say the least. I think you would know very well what sort of a journey that would be, given your past experiences.
Maybe not as much as or as rich as yours, but yes, yeah, it's a completely different world. Yeah.
No, it's completely different world. I mean, I've got to do a number of really cool things. So I managed to be a Miss South Africa finalist, which
Amazing.
is kind of crazy because I grew up as a kid, with my mom and my sister watching like Miss South Africa, the finals, like almost every year growing up. And it's kind of surreal to actually have been on that stage and have that experience. It's insane.
Mm. And how old are you at this point? You're on TV, on stage as a finalist?
19.
19. Okay. Yeah.
19, I remember being completely scared, really worried about being judged by the world, but yet at the same time, I suppose I was courageous enough to be there in the first place. So, but yeah, just remember being incredibly stressed out and really worried about what everyone was going to think. Was I too fat? Was my answers okay? Am I okay? Am I not okay? If they judge me, does that mean that I'm just not good enough? Why am I even on the stage?
It's an incredibly vulnerable place to be, right? Being on a stage, spotlights. You're in a dress, you're in a bikini, all eyes on you, trying to solve for world peace. I mean, for someone
I don't know about solve world peace, but yeah.
Generally the answer, right, world peace. For someone who did feel like an outsider and a little bit quirky, and it seems a strange place for you to run towards. I would have thought one would want to run away from such a stage.
It's true. I didn't run towards it at all.
Yeah.
Actually, it's my sister that sort of pushed me into entering. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. I mean, if it wasn't for my sister in my life, there are some things that I would never have experienced if it wasn't for her. And for that, I'm truly grateful. And I would have not gotten that opportunity on the Miss South Africa stage if it wasn't my sister who pushed me to enter in the first place.
Okay. So sometimes we need a little kick, right? It helps to have a loved one provide us with a bit of a kick or motivation to do something that's outside of our comfort zone. Do you feel like that the confidence is accretive to other parts of your life? Does it stack? Does it transfer to other areas?
I don't think it does, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think I learned because I wasn't confident. I had to learn how to come across as confident, if that makes sense. Because you can come across as confident and not be confident at all. Completely.
It's a role, right? A role one plays, you present as confident, but you're like that, the stereotypical swan, right? Just paddling furiously under the water, but serene on top. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're paddling less furiously, these days, decades on?
I think I paddle. I mean, look, I still have an issue of like, am I good enough, etc. But it's a lot less paddling, I think. I think it's taken me my whole life up until recently to actually say that I'm proud of myself and to acknowledge that. I think I looked at everything I've achieved before and I was like, I'm not good enough or whatever, right? And I couldn't even say, oh, Suhina, I'm really proud of everything that you've achieved. And that's really sad because if I can't be proud of myself, how can I be proud of like the team or anyone else around me if I can't even be proud of myself, right? I mean, isn't that one of the fundamental things of self-love?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I have an interesting tidbit for you as a sidebar because it's really interesting to hear you talk about that. So if you go into Google and, this predictive search, if you type, how do I learn to ... the third most Googled term in the world is how do I learn to love myself?
Really? That's insane.
Do it. And it comes up third. So I think it's how do I learn to code is first. Boring, but necessary. How do I learn to speak English is probably second, or learn a foreign language. And then how do I learn to love myself is third. It's staggering, right? So it's another, without being too depressive or pessimistic, it is a worldwide epidemic of insufficiency, right? Of people not feeling that self-love or self-esteem. So I'm glad that you've arrived there. Obviously not an easy process for anyone. And I think most of us are still arriving in a process of trying to arrive there clearly. What about a little bit more about the maybe perceptions of people who are symmetrical, aka attractive or beautiful, and how that works against you sometimes? You went from being, Miss South Africa finalist to then being a very serious profession, being a GP, right? And working in oncology, being a doctor, a medical practitioner. Is there sometimes an attractiveness tax?
Always. And I hate to admit it.
Because it helps sometimes, right? Let's not be, let's be fair. Sometimes it works in your favor, but certainly in the business world, sometimes there is a tax.
I think, look, I mean, I think it definitely does help. Yeah. But I would say in the professional business world, I don't think it does. Well, it hasn't done me any favors.
Go deeper.
At all.
Yeah.
Gosh, I have so many stories with regards to that. I mean, there is a situation once where I was, I had recently moved to Singapore, and I was, trying to find out what to do next, etc. I met with an individual to find out about a particular role. I won't say what the role was.
Sure.
But, at some point during the conversation, the person stopped and asked me, and they said, well, can we get the elephant out of the room, Suhina? And I was just like,
I don't
what's
see
the elephant? I don't see an elephant.
I don't see one, but go on. Yeah.
And he was like, what do you look like? Is that not an issue? And I was just like,
And this is a job interview, a serious job interview.
It's a job interview.
Yeah.
And I mean, I later found out that the reason why I didn't get the role was that they were really worried about me looking the way that I look, that would create a problem, and that there would be some sort of potential sexual harassment issues. And so then it was best not to employ me.
In the first place, yeah.
Which is bizarre.
Completely.
Right.
Yeah. You're inventing a reason not to hire someone who's capable and competent and otherwise a perfect fit. It seems bizarre to me, and yet, I raise the question because I know that the world sometimes operates that way.
Or or sometimes, I mean, so I actually have to use, which I absolutely hate. And I know I have the title doctor or MD behind my name or whatever.
Yeah.
And I hate having people say Dr. Suhina or have it on my card or whatever, because I am just me. I'm not defined by any title or anything. I'm just a human being, just like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
A title does not define who I am. But unfortunately, I need to use the title.
Sometimes it's helpful.
No, because no one takes me seriously otherwise. Because they look at me and they're like, meh. Well, what?
You do have a fashion blog, and then they're using that as as something to poke you with, right? As opposed to something that is just part of who you are and something you find genuinely interesting.
No, absolutely. One of my ex-bosses actually, he told me the first time that, he met me in a very serious meeting in oncology, and I was helping with that meeting. He thought, oh my gosh, what is what is this woman doing here? Why did they bring a model in here? Like, this is a really serious topic.
Yeah. Why is she pretending to wear a stethoscope? Get her out.
I wasn't wearing a stethoscope. It was in a business environment. But yeah, I mean, he had also, I mean, kudos to him for like actually being so transparent and open about the bias.
Yes.
But he quickly realized that, actually, she has a reason to be here. So that was good. But I mean, there definitely is this bias that if you look a certain way that you're not capable. I don't know. There seems to be this correlation. Well, okay, if you look good or you're attractive, that means that you're of inferior intellectual capacity. And the funny thing is that happens more so, I think, for women than with men.
Probably, yeah. Definitely, yeah. More into kind of your life as a medical practitioner before we get into kind of your latest venture, Jonda Health. What was the hardest part of being a GP, of seeing? It's a leading question, I know, but because there's a recency bias, as you know, in my life, but of being in hospital every day, of seeing pain, being witness to suffering. I'm interested in how people compartmentalize things. How did you kind of toe that line?
I found it very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a junior doctor, I was always told that, you shouldn't wear your heart on your sleeve.
Mm.
But it's funny because me wearing my heart on my sleeve actually made me a really good doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think bedside manner and feeling someone cares about you is a huge plus, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, there are things, you don't even get taught how to deal with some of the situations you get faced with when you're in medical school.
Zero.
Like there's no training.
Wow.
I don't remember any training at all with regards to how do you dealing with a patient that's died, right? And you're in an emergency, and I mean, because you feel responsible, right?
Of course one would, yeah.
And I remember when I was a very, 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 very young doctor, there was a patient who had come in and she was okay. I thought maybe she had like a peptic ulcer. And I thought, you know what, we should probably admit her and keep her for like 24 hours. And then she gets seen by the surgeon before she goes home. Something intuitively told me, she should stay. I mean, I did every single test.
But you felt in your gut she should stay.
I felt like she should stay. Yeah. I felt like she should stay because it was the right thing to do. But she insisted on leaving. So I said, okay, but just make sure you come back, or if you have a problem, come back. 24 hours later, I was on call again, and she came in and she was unconscious. And actually the ulcer had burst. And about a couple of days later, she had passed away. And you can't help but feel responsible, right? Because you think, well, if I just made her stay, maybe she would still be alive. And I needed to speak to so many friends, so many colleagues to put my mind at ease that I did everything correctly. And it wasn't my fault because you feel like it's your fault, right?
Yeah.
You let the patient go home and then a couple of days later, she passes away. I mean, that's really hard to deal with. Nothing teaches you how to deal with that. Nothing.
No. And it happens again and again and again. Presumably, the longer you're in practice, it's inevitable. So is the answer to close oneself off and compartmentalize it, but then it detracts from what makes you human and makes you a good doctor, doesn't it? You have to be able to feel it, but not let it destroy you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I mean, part of that's probably also why I landed up in some ways leaving, right? I was working in oncology. My brother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which basically means you're screwed.
You're done. Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And that was so traumatic in so many ways.
And how old are you at this time? At this point, roughly.
Question.
Yeah.
Probably about 27, 28.
Yeah, it's young. Yeah.
But just very, very traumatic, the whole thing. And then when he passed away, I always feel a lot for my patients, but it was different because after he passed away and while he was ill, I felt too much. I literally felt like the pain of every, it was too close to home. And then I knew that I needed to sort of make a change. And that's actually when I did, because it was too much for me to handle and to bear. It was too difficult.
Yeah, it's a profession I could never, ever do, because I think, as you rightly described, when things like that happen, I don't know how I'd go home and just turn it off and get a good night's sleep. I just think I would find it impossible. I think most people watching and listening would find it impossible too. So there's a reason it's a very noble profession, but not everyone can or should do it. You did do it, and we're obviously very good. But again, everyone reserves the right to walk away and change. It's still a career, right? You have absolutely no obligation to stay in forever and keep doing it. So you have to do what's best for you, don't you?
No, that's true. I mean, the funny story is that I actually wanted to then go and do palliative care medicine. And my husband's like, are you crazy?
I'm going to double down. I'm doubling down on the pain.
Double down on this.
That wasn't hard enough.
My husband was like, are you sure? Yeah. I don't think, because he always wanted to go to business school and stuff like that. So maybe it's maybe. And I was then, after I actually saw the clinical psychologist at the oncology clinic I worked at. And it was great. I think sometimes psychologists, there's a big taboo about seeing a psychologist, but that was, honestly, it was one session and it did wonders because it helped me to come to the realization that I really needed to make that change.
Amazing.
For my own good. So, yeah.
And bang for your buck, one session. We should plug them afterwards, whoever that psychologist is. One session and you're done. So you mentioned there in conversation that you went and kind of retrained and you went back to university. You've been back to university twice, if I'm not mistaken, right, in terms of your master's and then executive MBA. Maybe talk to the audience about that transition away from the world of medicine and into the more corporate world. How did that kind of, how did you figure your way through there?
Oh my gosh, that was tough.
Start any way you like.
That was difficult.
Yeah.
There was rejection after rejection. I mean, there's one thing about getting like a business degree and thinking, now I'm going to go conquer the world.
Sure.
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite happen like that.
No one's waiting to give you that dream job.
Give me a chance, please.
Is this in Singapore? You've moved to Singapore at this point?
I moved to Singapore.
UK? Yeah.
No, so I'd moved to Singapore, and I think that's also what made it really challenging, right?
How many years ago is this now? 12?
11.
years? 11 years, yeah. Okay.
So I think that also landed up being the challenge, right? So it's not just about changing professions. I was changing countries, didn't really know anyone. So attempt to have this thing in my life where I'm like, that's not difficult enough. Let me just make it a little bit harder. Why not?
Scoop a bit more on.
Just let's make life more complicated.
Yeah.
But it was difficult, because you think, okay, now I have this really nice fancy degree and yay, I'm going to go conquer the world, only to be rejected time and time again. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And, when I was trying to enter the pharmaceutical industry, everyone was like, oh, but you need to have previous experience. So I'm like, well, how do you expect me to have previous experience if you don't even give me the chance?
It's a classic meme, right? I say, you need to have experience for the job. Yeah, it's back and forth. It's, So,
I mean, I'm really...
Chicken and egg.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm really grateful for the people that have believed in me and then have given me the opportunity. And saw in me, actually more often than not, something that I didn't even see in myself. And for that, I'm grateful because I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah. And in terms of getting, I've been there as well for what it's worth. So I've applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs and, not even got an interview, CV just ignored, and then interviewed many times and not quite made it. So I'm very familiar with that pain of rejection in the corporate world. You took a role that was arguably beneath you and beneath kind of your level of qualification and skill set, didn't you? Just to get a foot in the door. Is that correct? Yeah. And then that provided a springboard, I guess, for later successes. But at the time, I'm guessing there were people telling you maybe you're overqualified for this role and shouldn't take it. But what was your decision filter there for taking it? Was it pure desperation, like I need the first thing I get offered, or was there a little bit of a strategy behind it?
No, there was a bit more of a strategy behind it. But I think also, when you're in the situation where you're trying to find the way forward, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's like I said, there's nothing about like titles or whatever. Nothing is beneath me to do to get to where I want to go in terms of, oh, that role is not, is too junior, or like I'm better than that. Mm-hmm. Okay, these are the deck of cards I've been dealt. So I can either cry about it and not do anything, or I can say, okay, look, these are the cards I'm dealt. How do I move forward? Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, is it painful? Is it difficult? Mm-hmm. Yes, but if I want to move forward, then I need to make do with what I'm dealt. And I'm very grateful for the person who actually even gave me the opportunity, because I knew that if I could prove myself there, mm-hmm. then hopefully someone would be able to see that I'm capable and then give me the next opportunity, which is exactly what happened.
They did. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of, what was your experience of the corporate world? You're at Sanofi, if I'm not mistaken, right? Big pharmaceutical company. How did you enjoy that change and drastic sea change in your career from being, in a hospital as a GP to then, being in the corporate beast?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different world.
Adjacent skill set, clearly, medicine, science, pharmaceuticals, but still very different. Yeah. No,
very different. But for me, it was great because, even before I started my time in like Sanofi, mm-hmm. I always wanted to, like, I had this entrepreneurial spirit, and I knew that I wanted to do something with data, and I knew it was important for pharma, but I didn't quite understand how the pharmaceutical industry actually worked. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I really wanted to work in pharma. So when the opportunity came, I was like, yes,
I've arrived.
I'm doing this. Let's go. Right. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was a great amount of learning. Mm-hmm. There's obviously frustrations that come with working with a big corporate. You can't just move at the pace that you want to pay, that you want to go at. You obviously need to get a lot more buy-in. There's a lot more stakeholder management. Yeah. Which are, by the way, are all really important skill sets to learn. Yeah. So I think all around for me, it was a great opportunity from a learning perspective, and a very necessary one. Because I can't do what I'm doing today without that experience. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think you also come to a point where you outgrow where you are. Mm-hmm. And then you have a lot of inner conflict and a lot of frustration. And I think that was what happened towards the end of my journey. Yeah, that came to a head, didn't it? When I believe there was an opportunity for promotion internally that you were passed over for. And that was kind of maybe a sliding doors moment for you in terms of, do I stay, do I go? No, absolutely. Yeah. I didn't get the role that I had wanted. And that led me into the executive MBA. But I think that life also has a funny way of also giving you a right kick up the ass sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Happens a lot in my life. It's either people or it's life in general. But this time, the regional office, mm-hmm. Sanofi was going through like redundancies, and they were making a whole bunch of changes, and my role was up for redundancy. Mm-hmm. And they really did try to offer me other roles, but I actually realized I didn't want to do any of the other roles. And for me, it was sort of like, I was frustrated anyway for a whole year and a half prior. Mm-hmm. So it kind of felt like it was the universe saying, okay, like... How many more clues do you need, Suhina? Get out. Get out. Yeah. And for that, I'm also very grateful. Sometimes when a door closes, maybe it's meant to close. Yeah, exactly. It's supposed to push you on the way out. And that executive MBA that you did at INSEAD, how vital was that in terms of network, in terms of what you learned, in terms of mindset? What's the biggest thing you got out of it? Oh, wow. That's so hard to answer, because for me, my executive MBA at INSEAD was life-changing in so many ways, mm-hmm. Not just in like the knowledge set I acquired, but just the growth, the personal development and growth within myself. Mm-hmm. I developed a much deeper sense of self-awareness. Okay. When I went to the executive MBA, I didn't even know what my own strengths were. Mm-hmm. I remember going to like the career office, and they were like, okay, so what are your strengths? And I was like, what are my strengths? I'm like, I don't know. I used to save lives before. I don't know. I don't know what my strengths are. You tell me. I don't know. I don't know what my strengths are. But I mean, jokes aside, I mean, I think I also sort of rediscovered who I was through a lot of the personal work that was done, because as part of the Executive MBA, there's a leadership development program. And that for me was very crucial. It reminded me of the young physician that chose to become a young physician. It reminded me of that spirit of that individual that really wanted to change the world. And I got it back. And for that, I'm very grateful. I'm not sure many people can say that they found their purpose in life. I think I already knew at a very young age, and I'm so grateful to have that back. For the first time in my life, I actually feel at ease. There's no inner conflict. I actually feel at ease.
Yeah.
And that's really nice.
Well, it's almost, it's priceless, isn't it? You found your way back to yourself. Which is probably a good jumping off point to talk about your latest venture, Jonda Health, right? This is your baby right now. I know how hard you work because we're friends and we talk, and I know you're pulling some insane hours. So we just kind of touched upon purpose and finding what drives you. What drove you to set up Jonda Health? What do you hope to change in the world of health and more broadly?
So when it comes to what drove me to Jonda Health, so what a lot of people don't realize is that the concept was actually from 11 years ago.
Been simmering away.
I don't talk about sitting on my ass and not doing anything for like 11 years. No, not that I didn't do anything. But I guess it helped me to fully appreciate the problem that existed when it came to health data. With my brother-in-law, I mean, managing his illness between South Africa and the UK, that was a huge challenge. Okay. There was a movement of data, et cetera, and dealing with large amounts of funds. To be honest, when you have a family member going through that, I mean, that's the last thing you want to be dealing with, is trying to figure out how do you transfer data, how do you get information from one place to the next. It was very difficult. Then moving on, I think when I was in the pharmaceutical industry, once again, getting access to data from a research standpoint, there were a number of issues because the data were in different formats. You can name the same thing in multiple different ways and they all mean the same thing. It's great. And then as a patient, so I unfortunately have a few autoimmune disorders. And so that means I get to see a few different specialists. And I struggle to manage my own health because every time I went to a different lab, everyone is giving it to me in papers, PDFs, and then everyone's calling the same thing something different. Yeah. Which, to be honest, for me is fine because I'm a doctor and I understand it.
But if you're an average person on the street, it's a nightmare.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I was just like, doesn't make sense. And also I couldn't see how I was responding to treatment because I had PDF here, some papers there. I don't know, something is in this app, something is in that app. And I was like, I don't know. I give up.
But all of these systems, they're not talking to one another, correct?
Absolutely.
It's a jungle.
They just don't, right? Yeah. And the sad thing is, even if your physician seeing you, they don't have access to all the information if you did it at every different doctor. They don't have access to that data either.
Yeah, forget different country, even just a different lab or a different clinic in the same town, right? Can be totally different.
No, it was completely ridiculous. I mean, what happens sometimes is that I'd go for a blood test and then 2 weeks later I'm going for a blood test again because it's two different doctors and they may be ordering the exact same test. With so much effort, honestly, to just try and get them to coordinate.
Yeah.
I just go for the blood test twice, which, by the way, doesn't do me any favors because I get pricked twice. Yes. It's time out of my day, which is not ideal. Yeah. And then to make matters worse, that's really bad for my insurance because I'm having another set of tests done, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Everyone loses.
Everyone loses, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that made me dig a little bit deeper into some of the issues that exist with how data is managed and how systems talk to each other. And so really we created Jonda Health with that sort of vision to make health data usable, accessible and transparent. Yeah. So usable so that actually it's not just trapped in a PDF, it's not just trapped in paper, and that actually you can see trends and that, you can actually use this data for predictive algorithms, etc.
Yeah. So this is kind of a big data, a fintech proposition that you've applied to scratch your own itch, essentially, right? You've seen a problem. It's a nightmare for you. If it's a nightmare for you as a medical professional, imagine how much of a nightmare it is for anyone who's sick. Yeah.
No,
and that's generally a good principle to start any business is, right? Solve your own problem first. So it's perfect.
No, it's true. Yeah. But it's funny. You just keep like, because I thought, okay, it's fine. We'll create this patient-facing application, which is great, and people can have all their data in a single place.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got this app, you've got the Jonda app, and it's all in one place.
Exactly. I'm sort of scratching a little bit deeper, and we're like, wait a minute, there's a whole B2B problem here.
Yeah.
Because in the clinic management systems that like the doctors use, a lot of the blood biomarker data is still stuck in PDFs. And there's huge issues when it comes to exchanging data. And so now what we've done is the data transformation engine that powers the patient-facing application, we've just given it its own name called Jonda X. And so that is now being piloted too, which is great.
Yeah. So what phase are you at now broadly? What would be the next phase of development for Jonda? What's going to take you to the next level? Because it's an incredibly immense problem of huge complexity. I would be terrible trying to tackle this problem. It doesn't suit my skill set at all. But I know, given that your passion for it and just the way your brain works as well, this is perfect for you. But I would be of zero use whatsoever. So tell me, kind of break it down. How do you get to the next level? What's the next big win for you guys?
Yeah, so right now, we're too busy with 2 different pilots. The plan is to get more pilots because as we start to implement the solution, we also get to learn in that process, which is great. We've tried to narrow the focus down just to quantitative blood biomarkers and the most common ones.
Okay.
I think what people don't realize is that the majority of blood tests actually are like probably 20% of all the potential blood tests you could do, right? So it's this 80-20 rule. So you can actually, it's a good starting point to start with the most common blood tests. Yes. So that's where we've started. So the next step for us then would be fundraising because we can only get so far with where we are right now. Mm-hmm. Fortunately or unfortunately, because at some point we will need to be able to scale up. Mm-hmm. Then next steps is trying to tackle other areas outside of just blood biomarker data. Mm-hmm. But I think that will probably take us maybe a year to get there. I want to make sure that what we do now, we do well before we add something else.
Sure. Yeah. Nail the first thing. Show that it works, raise funds, then you can start to copy and paste in other areas, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we did before was we were trying to do too much.
Sure. Yeah.
And we already started with like medication, doing the same thing for medication, and then we're doing other things. It was just too much, right? Yeah. And we really needed to, because you get so excited because you're like, ooh, there's this problem and there's that problem.
It's a huge universe of problems. Yeah.
And I can solve this and I can solve that. which is great. But like you at some point you really need to like double down and focus. And it's good learning, focus.
Yeah.
But yeah. So baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very tempting for anyone in the startup world, as you said, to try and win in every single area. And sometimes when you chase 15 rabbits, you catch 0 because you scared them all off. Whereas if you just focused on one, you might get him. Right? So I think that's the right way to go about it. It's obviously a really, really tough environment to raise capital right now. Are you still fairly confident that if you've got the value prop and it works, that you won't have any issues with that? Because I'm speaking to a lot of founders right now, and it's hard going around with a begging bowl asking for funding when no one's that liquid. But you control what you can control, right? You can't control you can influence, but you can't necessarily control whether you get funded or not to the level you want to be funded, but you can control what you put into it, can't you?
No, absolutely. Look, I don't think it's an easy fundraising environment, not by any means, right? Oh. And we're completely bootstrapped. So, it's not going to be an easy fundraising environment, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I've actually turned down capital too.
Okay, good.
Well, at the end of the day, you also want
on
the right...
On principle or just wasn't smart money or... Not that we want to name anyone on this podcast, but you know who you are.
Maybe we shouldn't even go there.
Maybe we don't go there.
Maybe we should not put that into the conversation.
We'll protect the names of the innocent. But you turned down capital.
We have. I mean, we've turned down capital too, right? Sure. Because it also needs to be, we do want to have strategic investors on board.
Yes.
And also people that really, truly understand the industry in which we operate, because for us, that's really fundamental, right? Because if someone doesn't bring that strong knowledge set, etc., to help us get to the next level, then I'm taking money for the sake of taking money. And that's not going to really help us succeed.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Can we kind of double click on your chronic diseases? I know you suffer from a few autoimmune disorders or conditions, if you will. What are they, just in case someone's in the same boat, right? Because I know a lot of people do suffer from invisible conditions, family members of my own included, or chronic conditions that aren't visible necessarily on a day-to-day basis. What are they? How do they affect you? How do you manage day-to-day?
Great question. So I'll just talk about, I think most women have Hashimoto's and I have some other conditions, but I think I'll just focus on the ankylosing spondylitis because I think that one sort of is the one that taken me by the biggest surprise, because I didn't realize I had it. I got diagnosed a bit late. It's a challenge. People think because this
affects the spine, right?
It affects the spine. Yeah, correct. So it's an autoimmune condition that affects the spine. So I have days when I'm incredibly stiff, in a lot of pain, and I can't get out of bed, etc., which is not great.
Not ideal for a founder of a startup.
No, but to be honest, I am. Yeah, I have my condition under control, but it still requires discipline. I can't just go off and do what I want, right? I need to really control my lifestyle, what I eat, etc. So I really need to be quite vigilant. But yeah, there are days when I have a flare up and I really don't know why, but I also need to just listen to my body and then just take a break for a little bit and then carry on afterwards, right? But a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's just a hindrance that's going to make you ineffective as a startup founder. And I completely disagree, right? Because for me, it just sort of fuels a passion even more, right? Because it's patients like me that actually, we want our doctors to actually know what's going on with us, how to manage our condition. I would love to know what's causing my flare-ups, right? And to be honest, the data exists.
Somewhere.
It's just not being used.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. Because there's some days I'll be in pain and I'll still go throughout the day, have my meetings and everything else.
And you have to present as if it's not bothering you, presumably, and just grimace through it.
Pretty much, but I'm quite used to it. For me, it's quite normal to be in a pain score out of 6 out of 10. That's quite normal. Mode of operation. So it's quite okay.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult because when you do say no to things because you're not feeling well, people are like, oh, but you look okay.
It's the whole point. It's invisible.
Well, the worst thing is people are like, oh, bless, I hope you get better soon.
Yeah.
Not realizing, well, it's a chronic illness.
They mean well,
they mean well. It's like,
I know.
Maybe I do the same to other people, but it's sort of, it's a bit, and you don't really want to explain to everyone exactly what the issue is. Yeah. It's just sort of like, you kind of wish that it's just, you can walk around with like a little board on your head, which just sort of explained it so that, people understood.
With ankylosing spondylitis or whatever it is, that's quite a long billboard that you have to carry around.
Pain score I'm sure I said that wrong, is be kind.
Yeah, just be kind. Be kind. Well, you've already spoken about trying to be kinder to yourself and we have to be kinder to each other, certainly.
True.
In terms of kind of structuring your day as an entrepreneur, I like to geek out on this kind of stuff in terms of day architecture and how you manage your time, how you manage your energy. Do you have a process for how you attack things, how you organize your week? I think this kind of tactical stuff is quite interesting to people because everyone does it differently.
Yeah, I think I'm a disaster in that front. I'm an absolute disaster. So I'll be really good for a while and then I'll just go like completely off course. I mean, for me, what's really important in the mornings, at least, is trying to get sort of a morning walk in.
Okay.
Because that really helps me to just clear my mind, think through things in order to sort of start the day off on the right foot.
And this is not a time for taking calls and multitasking while you walk. This is kind of thinking time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or even if it's just going with a friend, right? Because you're just completely like, you're not thinking about work for that hour, right? You have just this complete break. And there's something great about being in nature, walking around in the botanic gardens. It's very peaceful.
Yes.
So I quite like that. So I like to start my day like that. The one thing I do though is breakfast is always at the same time at 8:30.
Okay,
and I start my day at 9.
Yeah.
And I don't like any deviation in that at all.
In that routine, yeah.
Yeah. If I need to do stuff that requires a lot of deep thinking, I actually prefer to do that in the morning.
Okay.
And if I feel like I'm in the flow, I just carry on with that. Yeah. I won't break it just because it's more productive for me personally that way.
I'm very much the same. Yeah.
So I'll just go with what I'm doing, even if there were other things that maybe I was meant to do. But if I'm in the flow, then actually for me, I better capitalize on that, because to take a break and then do something else and then maybe come back the next day doesn't work for me.
100%.
It will take me a while to get back into that rhythm of something very complex that I was doing. So then I'd rather just finish it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because I completely agree. Like, I think my saying on it, I'm sure someone else said it before me, everything important's already been said, but inspiration is perishable. So you got to use it while you've got it, right? If you feel like you're in a flow state and you're in the creative juices are flowing, you've got to run with it, because you don't know when it's going to come and strike you again. You can provoke the muse by having a routine, by having a routine in the morning, as you said, where you just go for a walk in nature, and that should stimulate the creative juices, hopefully, but you don't know when it's going to come. So use it, right? Don't dive into your emails. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing that I do, which is not around structuring my day, but if I'm really stuck on something or I can't figure it out, it sounds so bad. But what I do though is I go and take a 15-20 minute nap. And it's amazing.
That doesn't sound bad to me.
I don't know. Everyone else was like, what is this woman talking about?
I'm team naps. Yeah. Team power nap.
No, because I think I do some of my best thinking. And on that verge of when you're almost about to fall asleep. And sometimes for me, that works really well to solve for a problem when I'm super stuck. So, yeah.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. You get a little bit disassociative, right? And you can kind of make some new connections. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you remember I used to play professional football, so I'm very used to napping during the day. I'm very much team naps. Right? I could get away with it then. I don't really feel I can get away with it now that, I have a job on a laptop and I'm not running around in the hot sun. But yeah, definitely up for a nap in the daytime. I'm with you on that one. In terms of kind of other principles or just things you've learned along the way, for people who are a couple of steps behind, what would you maybe advise them to do or not to do? I mean, you've surrounded yourself, I think you've said, you professed before, with good people, having a good co-founder, having a husband you can bounce ideas off, friends you can bounce ideas off. Is there anything you would really urge kind of founders and entrepreneurs to do or not do? I don't know how much time or thought you've given that.
Well, I mean, I think developing a sense of self-awareness is fundamental.
Okay.
Because it helps you to understand yourself, how you show up, how you influence people, how you lead. It also helps you understand why you make certain decisions. And I think that's really fundamental.
Yes.
And I think it's something that's completely underestimated. I think self-awareness is 100% key to leading yourself as well as leading others.
You mentioned earlier, but we didn't actually get the answer. You said you didn't know what your strengths were before you went to INSEAD, and now you know. So kind of to double click on that, self-awareness. What do you believe your strengths to be, and what do you believe kind of your weak points to be, where you maybe outsource to other people?
So one of my strengths, so I've been told, and I guess I appreciate more now, is, I don't know, my voice. So everyone says actually, when I speak, people tend to actually listen. So that, I suppose, is actually a strength.
Definitely.
Which is great. The second one is actually being able to manage different stakeholders, and actually getting people to come together to move forward on something. So bringing people together is something that's another strength. I think the other one is, I think actually those two, I would say, are probably the biggest ones. Yeah.
And where have you found that it makes no sense to play in that sandbox and you should delegate or outsource to someone else?
Yeah. So I'm not sure I should say this in the podcast.
Then don't. Lest we offend someone out there.
Yeah. No, no, I think it would be bad for me from a fundraising standpoint.
We're going to leave that out. Only focus on strengths. Actually, I'm a big advocate for doubling down on strengths. You know, when I'm coaching people or, you know, people come to me for advice, I always say it's actually more beneficial to double down on your strengths, right? Rather than trying to round out your weaknesses and become like a 5 out of 10 in all of these different areas. If you've got a superpower, 9 out of 10, one more superpower, 9 out of 10, you're really, really powerful. I don't think being a 5 out of 10 in all of these different areas really serves you. We want people with spiky skill sets. So having the opposite of some positive spikes, I mean, having some weaknesses is totally fine, and it's part of the course. And they say a lot of successful people the joke is that a lot of successful people are just like a mental disorder channeled the right way. Right, like Steve Jobs, you know, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these incredibly successful visionaries, very laser focused people. So I don't know. There's probably some truth in the joke, right? That's what makes humor. There is a seed of truth in there. So absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, I do think self-awareness is very key, right? Because it also helps you to understand who are the people that you should have around you, right? Because you should have people that bring different skill sets and whose strengths are different from yours, right? It doesn't really help if, I mean, it's that whole point around like diversity,
building
right?
a team and
building a team. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I think, you know, you're someone who's worn so many different hats as we've alluded to over the years and still do. If there is a common theme and there's a thread I can pull on running through all of it, what is that value? What is that principle that runs through everything that you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's just curiosity, to be honest. Curiosity can't kill the cat, but hey, I'm still very much alive. So there we go. Yes, curiosity. I guess that's also what makes. I guess that's also what makes me an entrepreneur is curiosity, right? I find the problem and I can't quite stop digging. I just keep digging because I'm more curious and I'm more curious. So I would probably say it's curiosity that's led me. That's the common thread amongst everything. It's just about being curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any kind of words to live by that you carry with you? There could be your parents, could be friends, could be someone you've worked with, a mentor over the years. Is there something that's kind of quite powerful that someone said to you and you carry with you?
Yeah, I think there's two things, actually. There's not one thing. The one is my dad always kept telling me that, you know, there's no such word as can't. And he was said, you know, the word impossible says, I'm possible. So I think that's one of my favorite ones. So when everyone tells me, oh, you can't do something, I'm like, well, the word impossible says I'm possible. So therefore it must be possible. And then the second one is, you know, which is a terrible saying, and not to be taken literally, but figuratively, because we live in a world where everyone takes things very literally. So I'll put that disclaimer in there. How do you eat an elephant, right? And it's one spoon at a time. So tackling big problems, just, you know, break it down into bite-sized, digestible chunks, and eventually you will get there.
Yeah. I like that. And especially as an entrepreneur, sometimes it feels absolutely overwhelming with that list, the to-do list, all the priorities, all the competing interests. And as you say, one spoon at a time, one brick at a time. That's how you build it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Your dad sounds like a smart man and a positive man. Do you think that positivity is a choice? Because I'm of the opinion that it is. And again, the people you surround yourself with are a massive influence on that, on your disposition. He's given you that fire, that optimism to look at life through the lens of, hey, this is possible.
Yeah, I think it is. I know that I've gotten my head bitten off a few times when I said happiness is a choice. And someone was like, no, happiness is not a choice. And something bad happens to you, that's not happiness. So I wouldn't go to the extreme by saying happiness is a choice, but I would say that we can only control what we can control, right? And we can control how we choose to move ahead with things, right?
Yeah.
So you can either throw yourself a pity party, or you can say, okay, what can I do with this? Or you can look at, what are the positives? Even in the most horrible situation, there are things that we can learn that help us to move forward.
Yeah.
So yeah. So to a degree, yes, I agree with you.
Of all the different hats that you wear and have worn, is there a hat that you haven't worn yet that you would wish to wear? Do you think there's another evolution, another stage, or do you feel like, kind of solving for this healthcare problem with Jonda Health, this is my calling, this is my purpose, this is the hat that I'm supposed to fully, enclose myself with?
No, this is the hat that I'm supposed to be wearing at this stage in my life.
It's nice to have that clarity.
That I'm 110% sure. Whatever happens, my gosh, it's been such a humbling, incredible journey, entrepreneurship. And I'm so grateful for every day and every day of learning. I'm meant to be here. And for that, I'm really grateful. And I'm grateful to be given the opportunity to be able to do what I love and wake up in the morning and actually, as stressful as it is, still love what I do.
And go after it. Yeah.
And go after it.
Yeah.
Do I think there's something maybe 10, 15 years from now in evolution? Absolutely. I mean, I would love to be able to make an even greater change, once again, in healthcare. Hopefully in my own country. That would be amazing. I feel like I have so much to give back to the country. I mean, it made me who I am. And I wouldn't be here today for all those people that fought for our rights, even my grandparents, my mom and dad. We wouldn't be having this conversation. I don't know. I feel like it's a fundamental, it's my duty and it's a deep calling and my duty to be able to give back to the country and to fight for what I believe is right and for what I feel is a healthcare system that's more just and equitable. So yeah, I think Jonda Health is a stepping stone in that direction. So yeah.
I like that. That's duty is sometimes a word that is tainted with negative connotations. I see it in the positive. I think I really see that as something that, you feel there is something you need to give back. There's work to be done. So I like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A beautiful place to tie a ribbon on things, I think. A lovely note to finish on. Where can my audience find more about you, about Jonda Health? Can you point them towards your Instagram, website, handles? Where should they go to find out more about you and what you're doing?
So LinkedIn is probably the best place.
Okay, LinkedIn first and foremost. But if you
wanted to have a check on fashion, then that would be Instagram. But I'm usually not, to be honest, I don't really post that much on Instagram these days, anything fashion related. My life revolves 110% around work. So I'd probably say LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Perfect. Suhina, I've loved every moment of this. I've been completely present and just really enjoyed it. I haven't looked at my phone once, which has been glorious. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.